From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Kristen Amiad. It's Friday, July 11, 2025. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will travel to China this weekend for meetings with President Xi Jinping, Premier Li Qiang, and National People's Congress Chairman Zhao Leji. To read the latest from our reporters on the ground in China, visit theaustralian.com.au. Universities who fail to combat anti-Semitism on campus could be stripped of funding, and Border Force officials will be trained to spot anti-Semites. Those are some of the sweeping recommendations made by Special Envoy Jillian Segal in her plan to tackle Australia's anti-Semitism crisis. Today, we unpack the plan almost a year in the making. If you walked from Melbourne's lush Fitzroy Gardens, behind Victoria's old Parliament House building, and towards the city's ornate Royal Exhibition building, you'd pass by the historic East Melbourne Hebrew Congregation. Consecrated in 1877, it's the oldest synagogue in the southern capital, and it's here that around 200 local Jewish families come to worship. But last Saturday, this sacred place became the target of a vile anti-Semitic attack.
A Melbourne synagogue has been hit by an arson attack as adults and children were having a Shabbat meal inside.
Those congregants had barely escaped the blaze through the synagogue's back entrance when, just streets away, an Israeli-owned restaurant was stormed by anti-Israel protesters who threw chairs and chanted "Death to the IDF." Last weekend's attacks are the latest in a string of anti-Semitic atrocities reported since Hamas militants from Gaza invaded southern Israel on October 7, 2023, slaughtering 1,500 innocent men, women and children, and taking another 250 hostage. In all, 2,000 anti-Semitic incidents have been reported across Australia in just under 2 years. Now, the government says it has a plan to end the scourge of anti-Semitism in Australia for good.
The plan is grounded in Australian values. It's proactive and it's adapted to our federal legal framework. And it's not a symbolic document, it's an action plan. And it addresses anti-Semitism in many places, in our laws, classrooms, universities, media, workplaces, online spaces and public institutions.
This is the Special Envoy to Combat Anti-Semitism, Jillian Segal. For the last 9 months or so, she's been working on a wide-ranging strategy, which she launched on Thursday alongside Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Anti-Semitism is an evil scourge and there is no place in Australia for anti-Semitism. The kind of hatred and violence that we've seen on our streets recently is despicable and it won't be tolerated, and I want those responsible to face the full force of the law.
The plan includes a handful of measures broadly targeted at education, immigration and cultural activities.
We have to embed age-appropriate education into our school curricula. We need to support professional development of teachers and public servants. We need to promote cultural understanding, back trusted voices online, and encourage responsible media reporting. But education is the key.
Under the plan, Segal says a nationally consistent approach to teaching about the history and modern forms of anti-Semitism will be rolled out. Universities will be subject to report cards that assess their ability to combat anti-Semitism through systems and policies. And institutions that don't act on bigotry displayed by staff, students and artists could be stripped of funding. Border Force officials will be trained to identify and deport people who exhibit anti-Semitic behaviours. Cultural institutions and events organisers will also lose financial backing if they fail to deal with anti-Semitism effectively. And Australia's public institutions and all levels of government will adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism. Here's The Australian's Richard Ferguson.
So the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism is broad, it is strong, but there are many critics of Israel and people in the Muslim community who feel that the definition is so broad that it includes criticism of Israel as being anti-Semitic and therefore limits their own free speech. But the problem has been that criticism of Israel has been laden with anti-Semitic tropes about secret control, shadowy figures, the sort of things that have been used against Jewish people for centuries. So this has always been the problem, which is that criticism of Israel does not equal anti-Semitism, but criticism of Israel is so often overladen and resorts to anti-Semitism. And this is the problem, that people who say they're critics of Israel, not all of them are anti-Semites, but some of them are clearly taking things in an anti-Semitic direction and are leading others into anti-Semitic directions.
One thing the Special Envoy isn't pushing for in this plan is a judicial review of anti-Semitism on university campuses, which is something that's been floated over the last year or so. Why doesn't it appear in the action plan that was unveiled on Thursday?
Well, one of the reasons is essentially it's very hard for the Labour Party to back a judicial review into anti-Semitism when they've spent 2 years telling everybody it doesn't need to happen. Now, the argument from the government has been we're about action, not more reviews, not more inquiries. And there is pretty significant action, very significant action recommended by the Special Envoy. So in many ways, that's probably what a judicial inquiry would tell the government to do anyway. However, Jillian Segal does say that if things continue as badly as they have on Australian campuses, there will be a need for a judicial inquiry. So it almost keeps it in the back pocket of the government if this plan does not work, along with combining the disparate federal and state police task forces on anti-Semitism. Currently, the government does not want to merge them, but this review by Jillian Segal says you may have to do that in 6 months to a year's time if everything else we're doing doesn't work.
This plan represents about 9 months of work by Jillian Segal. She's consulted widely with experts and community groups to formulate what is a quite far-reaching strategy. Does it go far enough, do you think?
Many people in the Jewish community, Kristen, do feel like if this plan is implemented, and the word if is very important there, then it will work. Many of Jillian Segal's points are quite similar to a report by the Executive Council of Australian Jewry that was unveiled at the Sky News Anti-Semitism Summit. So there is a lot of hope and there's a lot of goodwill out there in the Jewish community for the federal government, which there has not been since the October 7 massacres. Lots of people feel that Anthony Albanese has not had a handle on this issue. Even if his heart's been in the right place, he hasn't been able to be the leader they need. Today they feel very differently. They feel he was strong, he was eloquent, he was on their side. But now they will hold him to account on actually getting this plan implemented.
Coming up, the government has a plan. Now what? On Thursday, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese pledged to carefully consider the measures proposed by Special Envoy Jillian Segal in her plan to combat anti-Semitism. But he wouldn't be drawn on which of those measures his government will implement or when.
We'll now carefully consider the report recommendations. There's a number of things in here that we are doing. There's a number of things can be implemented quickly. There are a number of things that will require work over a period of time. What we'll do is work constructively with the envoy.
Richard, as you said, Anthony Albanese's government has been under fire for its flat-footed response to Australia's anti-Semitism crisis over the past couple of years, really. What does the release of Jillian Segal's plan tell you about the attitudes within Labor towards this issue now?
Well, I think Dennis Shanahan, our national editor, puts it the best in his piece for The Australian today, that there has been one obvious shift since the February anti-Semitism summit and now, which is that Labour won the election and won it handily. And it won the election not just against the Liberals, who obviously ran very hard on the anti-Semitism crisis, but they defeated the Greens and they defeated the pro-Palestine independents in Western Sydney and other seats like that, where they were running anti-Israel and at many times anti-Semitic campaigns. Now, of course, he will say, I've always been committed to this. I've just been working on this plan. Everything I do is thorough and considered. I don't rush anything. But this plan has come out several days after yet more attacks against Jewish people in Melbourne, and it has come out on the other side of an election where the threat of the pro-Palestine Greens has been defeated.
Just lastly, Richard, what's been the response of Jewish leaders to the plan released on Thursday?
Look, incredibly welcoming. A lot of people are really welcoming in this plan, saying it's really strong. It's speaking to the points that we've been concerned about for a long, long time. But Alex Rivchin, who was the architect of the 15-point plan that came out of the anti-Semitism summit in February, he has also written for The Australian, saying, at times it seemed the government treated the anti-Semitism crisis as a nuisance rather than a moral imperative. The only real question was whether their approach was driven by ideology or hard political realities or both. What he says now is that, the Prime Minister and Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke have shown that they get it. They understand the extreme anti-Israel activists are not freedom fighters or peaceniks. They are a threat to us all. But what Alex Rivchin also says is this plan will be judged by the success of its implementation. It's not just federal governments who need to act, it's the state governments, it's the unis, it's the schools, it's the social media platforms, it's all of us to combat anti-Semitism. But Alex Rivchin says this does not get the federal government off the hook or abrogate its central role in guiding our country back to somewhere better than we are now. It has to lead the fight back. And that was the one thing in that presser. Both the Prime Minister and the Home Affairs Minister struggled to say what exact actions will be implemented by the end of the year. Now, of course, many of the things that are in the report, the government is already doing. For example, when it stopped Kanye West coming into the country because of the once iconic, now disgraced rappers, absolutely horrific fall into rank anti-Semitism and Hitler worship. And they pointed to that. But They did struggle a little bit to say what exact actions from this report we'll see in 6 months, a year's time. And that's where they're going to have to do more work with the community on that. But apart from that, look, widely the Jewish leaders believe that he has really stepped up to the mark.
That was The Australian's Richard Ferguson. To read our experts' analysis of the Albanese government's plan to tackle anti-Semitism, and for all the nation's best news, sport and politics, visit theaustralian.com.au.